Hi. Today I'm here with Debbie, and very first time Jim and I came to Alabanza, so this is our fifth time at Alabanza. So 5 years ago, we asked she and her husband Barden to share their story. And when we came back, we shared one of the things that they shared, and that is, and Debbie, she'll tell you from when she started with drugs and substance abuse, but she told us that she would go to church often. She was high, and her mother would say, "I don't even know why you go to church." And she said, "Because I know it's my only hope." And then when she was clean, she said to her brother, "Come to church." And he'd say, "I can't come to church like this." And she said, "Put your drugs in your pocket and come to church." Because again, she knew that was his only hope. And so I think the lessons we take from that is that even if somebody comes to church high, that we love them as Christ did. And just believe that the day will come. So this is Debbie, and she can take over.
Hi. My story is a story of hope. I don't want to concentrate too much on the war story, more on the God that never gives up on us, and the God that pursues us, even if we drag him right down to the gutter with us, he's there. He never leaves you alone. And I had a pretty normal upbringing. Divorced parents. We went to boarding school, so I think I suffered a bit of rejection, and I think that was my root, was rejection. And at about when I finished school, 16, 17, I got involved with the wrong man. I seemed to have a habit of choosing wrong men, and I got involved in drugs. He subsequently went overseas, and I got married twice after that. Very abusive. All three of those relationships were very abusive, and the only two good things out of both of my marriages that I got was my beautiful kids. And as life got harder, I just sunk more and more into drug addiction. It was my way of coping. It was my escape mechanism. I've known Jesus my whole life, and I got born again in my early 20s, right? Kind of when I realized that the drugs is now a problem, I got born again. So my whole drugging life, if you can call it that, I was born again. And so it was a really horrible existence, because I loved God. I don't think I quite realized how much he loved me. But I knew that I loved him, and I knew that I was letting him down constantly, but I didn't know any other way. It became my lifestyle. It became the only way I could live, the only way I could cope. And it got worse and worse and worse. I was eventually shooting Welcanol, which is on a par with heroin. We didn't have heroin in our country at that time. It was very scarce. It's very big now, but at that time, Welcanol was the big drug. So I was shooting that. And like you said, I used to go to church. The people at the church, including my mother, couldn't understand, why I even went to church. But I knew that Jesus was my only way out. He was the only one that could help me out of this. Not even the church could help me. It was Jesus, and I was searching for that realness of Jesus. I got very hurt by the church, so I got very rebellious and very anti-Christians, because I felt that they didn't understand, and yet I clung on to Jesus, and I used to talk about him even when I was high and shooting up and sitting in the streets and sitting in the gutters. I was always talking about him, and my friends all thought I was nuts, but I actually didn't care. I fell pregnant the second time, with my son when I was possibly at the worst stage of my addiction. And Jonathan, I drugged with him and I was shooting. I drugged all the way up until about an hour before he was born. And I told the doctors, I asked them to please get me into a rehab because I couldn't stop. And it was possibly the worst time in my life. I hated myself so much. I hated what I was doing, and but I couldn't stop. I was stuck. And I used to pray over my baby. Every time before I would have a shot, I would lay hands on my tummy and say, God, I know what I'm doing is not right. And I need you to just protect my baby. And the doctors told me that he wasn't going to be born normal. If he was born alive, he would not be born normal. And I wouldn't accept it. I used to say, no, Jesus, you know I'm stuck. If you can't help me out of this, then I'm trusting you to look after my baby. And when he was born, we went through withdrawal together. He screamed for the first 4 hours of my life, and I think I just sat there with so much hatred towards myself, and I just held him, and we cried together, and we were withdrawing together. And but he was normal, totally normal. The little test that they do on them, he was not just average, he was above average. This is from the doctors saying that if he is born alive, he won't be normal. And I started to realize the power of God and the love of God. And when he was 5 months old, his father, I actually ran away from his father, and he found me, and he kicked me in the face, and he broke my jaw, and he took Jonathan and he ran. He left with him, so I had to follow him. And he took me to the hospital, and they said, no, they're going to have to wire up my jaw. So, and then he said, no, he's going to go and fetch our stuff. We were staying at a place for a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
And he said he's going to go and get our stuff, and we're going to go down to the Cape. They had another branch down in the Cape. And when I just said to him, yes, it's fine, go fetch your stuff. And while he was gone, I phoned my mother, and I said to her, I need to get out of this relationship. This man is going to eventually kill me, and he's not good for either me or my son. So she phoned around to find us a place to stay, and I went into various places of safety, but they weren't equipped to deal with me. And eventually she found a place down in the Cape. We thought it was a rehab for mothers and children, with children, but when I got there, it was actually also a shelter for abused women and children, which I suppose we were. But it wasn't what I needed. I had freedom to come and go, so I just carried on with my addiction. And because I knew nobody down there and I had no source of income, I was stealing my drugs out of the chemist. Most of the drugs that I used were pharmaceutical drugs. They weren't really street drugs. But anyway, I got caught, and they threw me in jail with Jonathan, and he screamed the whole night. And I kind of made a bargain with God, and I said to him, Lord, please, if you can get me out of this, I promise you I'm going to stop. And then I said, if I don't stop, then I'm asking you to please take this child away from me, because he doesn't deserve a mother like this. And God honored my bargain with him, and I didn't even appear in court. They made me go and sit in a room and rewind tapes, and then Jonathan started to get restless, so they said I could go. And I didn't honor my commitment. I went straight from there. I went to the chemist, and I went to a public toilet. I only had dirty needles left, very dirty needles, and the only place I had veins left was in my neck, and I was shooting in my neck, and while I was injecting this stuff into me, I could feel something has gone very wrong, but I carried on. I pushed it all in, and but I knew I knew that I had done myself bad damage. And by the next morning, I was in so much agony, I couldn't move. My head felt like it was going to split open. And the shelter that I was at, I just said to them, look, I've used drugs and I've picked up an infection or something, but you need to get me to the hospital. And so they called an ambulance for me. One of the ladies there looked after, I asked her to just watch Jonathan for me. And I went into the hospital. They managed to get hold of my mom, and she arranged to come and fetch Jonathan, but he went into foster care for a while. So God did what I told him to do. If I carried on, I said, take my child away, which he did. And I was in hospital for 3 months. They told my mother that I wasn't going to make it. I was going to die. But there was something inside of me, I didn't really feel that I was going to die. And they really, really fought to save my life. And the minute I went blind and I was deaf, my head swelled up, I looked like a monster.